Right, this is about ceremony 41. The last one, anyway. I'll work it out in a minute. Yeah, because ceremony 40 was the mega one. Conversation with Mama 41. To be honest, I'm not going to say anything about it really, because I just don't really remember much about it. I don't know whether that's because of how heavy the previous one was. Um, Not really anything interesting happened. It was another late one. But I do want to document something that happened before the ceremony just because it's interesting and it's different. Um, when we got there, it was only me, Alan, and Colin that turned up. Joshua didn't come, and then the new people didn't come either. And it turned out saw Joshua came, chatted to me the next morning, and he said, because someone had said he went into Kitos for the day and he maybe had a cold, he had a streaming nose, but luckily it turned out probably to be an allergic reaction because there's so much pollution in the Kitos. And when you're hypersensitive and on a big diet like he is, you're really going to feel all the negative shit that goes on there. But anyway, so he was okay, but he just thought he'd have a break and try and just recover himself, so he didn't want to bring that into the ceremony. And then the new couple they'd only arrived that morning, but they were tired and a bit apprehensive, trying to get used to the retreat, I suppose, and they didn't want to do it, and it was just the three of us. So it was nice from that respect. It was Gino and Lady sat in anyway as guarding, as facilitators to help people to the toilet and everything, and we were everyone seemed quite bright mood and chatting and a bit of a laugh. And I asked Gino, I said, "Oh, when you walked me back the other night, your back was bad." I said, "How is it?" And he said, "Yeah, it's fine." And I said, "I hope it wasn't lugging me along." And I said, "How did you do it? Did you bend over funny or anything like that?" And then it was really interesting because he said, "Oh, well, I was sat on the mat at the start of what was ceremony 41 when I had my big conversation with Mama. That was the start of that night." And then he stared into space for like 10 seconds. And I just kind of had that feeling you're really thinking about what you should say here for Colin and Alan's benefit. I mean, he knows about my history, so he knows it wouldn't faze me. But he decided to go ahead and explain anyway. And he said, "Oh, yeah." He said, "No," he said, "I didn't do anything physical like that." He said, "It was when I was guarding the other night, the previous ceremony. There was a feeling that something pushed him hard, like a hand touched his back and gave him a shove. And that's where his back went out. And obviously there's no one in the locus, so you know what I'm talking about." So, explaining, I was saying, "What do you think?" So, energies were crept in kind of thing. And he said, "Yeah." And then interestingly enough, then, because he'd said that, Maestro almost probably clued, because I was thinking, when he started to talk about it, I was thinking, fuck, man, should you be talking about this for Colin and Alan right before a ceremony, I think, Colin's okay about it. He's done enough research and he's open-minded like that. But you don't know how people are going to react, because they may not know anything about the dark side. Because Gino was explaining, he said, you have to understand there's a dark side to plant spirits as well as the light side. And of course, most people don't know that the role of the shaman in any shamanism is to only bring the healing and the light stuff and the white stuff. But obviously, yin and yang, there's an equal and opposite component for everything in the universe. So this is what is kept out. That's what we mean by he's guarding the space, controlling the space. He's keeping the dark energies out when people are spiritually open in ayahuasca. They're keeping the dark energies out, as well as that dark energy that they contain from cross-contaminating others, etc. So anyway, but he said it and it didn't faze anybody. But it seemed like Maestro kind of picked up on that, and almost, because he doesn't do this at all, he's never done this before, he actually then started doing a cleaning, like, the usual and then shaking his rattle, and then he muttered the prayer that he does in really fast Quechuan, with the sort of seems to have a mix of Spanish in there, and Quechuan language, so really fast, like a prayer. Then you kind of reinsurance it. Just keeping keeping the mal energias outside. So that was a really interesting start to that ceremony. And then it was the same as the previous one. Maestro gave me about half a cup this time. I was kind of wanting to go a bit further, so I just took it anyway. It was a half cup. Oh, that's a fairly big mouthful. Oh, big half cup. Nothing happened for 2 hours. So here we go again. I know what this night's going to be, but it wasn't as intense. It was actually quite mild overall because I think it was a different mix. I'll probably hoping to interview Colin this afternoon after lunch, because it's Friday today, so we'll do ceremony 42 tonight for me. Be Colin's third. So hopefully I'll do an interview with Colin after his second one to see how he's progressed already after only 2 ceremonies. So that should be quite interesting and nice for people who are looking at for how ayahuasca works, if they're new to it and they want to know what somebody might go through. Other than my stuff that's already up on the site, but that's just my stuff. So it's always good to get a comparison to see how completely different it is, the different experiences that different people have, and what they might see or what their requirements are. Blah blah blah. You know the story. So anyway, we'll hopefully get that. So yeah. When it came time for the second cup, obviously I knew I was going to do it, and he gave me another quite a big cup again, but I didn't drink all of it. I thought, no, I'm just as it was just handed to me, I started to feel the first one. I thought, fuck, that would be a big trap. Just drink 2 like half cups. That would be the equivalent of a whole cup for ceremony. And because I know it's going to be late coming, it'll mean another long night for me. And I thought, there's no, the practicalities, there's no point feeling really rough on the physical side, and because you're going to be awake anyway, and I know I'm going to be talking to Mama, and I thought, I'm going to be awake 3 hours. There's no point feeling doubly shit, because I'm going to vomit anyway, so why make it doubly hard and probably longer awake when really at that point, 4 or 5 in the morning, you really want to get to sleep. Because you're up at, it's light here at 6, so it's, you're waking up anyway, and it's difficult to sleep from 6 and 8 because other people start getting up and banging doors, and so you never really get asleep. Even if you sleep through till 9, you don't. It's broken, which is why you can feel hungover and groggy. So anyway, it was pretty much similar to last time, but nowhere near as strong, fortunately, because I didn't drink all of that second cup. I had about half of it, so probably, I don't know, a third or a quarter of a cup or whatever. But again, it started to come up, and then it's like, yeah, here we go. One bit was interesting. I was feeling a bit rough at one point, just before Maestro brought out the tubular bells. And I actually had a negative reaction to those. So they've actually got a cleaning aspect to them. Normally they're really beautiful because you've probably had a lot of, you've been cleaned quite a bit. And then when the bells start, you think, oh, it's only another ichor or 2, and that's the end of the ceremony. But sometimes that sonic sound on ayahuasca, it's so pure. And normally it's beautiful, especially when it's bouncing around in ceremony. But this one, it's like, that's making me something stuck in there, and it's found it because it's like a pure tone. It's another type of sonic healing when you're in the ayahuasca space. So that was quite interesting, because also I could hear Colin having a bit of a rough time, like burping and moving, and as if he was uncomfortable, and like as if I thought maybe he was gonna puke again or something. So maybe he had I don't know. We'll have to ask him this afternoon, because I definitely felt a little bit uncomfortable for half of the duration of the bells, and then I turned onto my back again, and then it started to be okay, and then it sort of became nice again, and it's like, yeah, that's all trippy sounds, but it definitely had a sort of a discomfort feeling, like it was driving dark energy stuck inside your stomach. So yeah, that's something else I remembered. So anyway, I got back to here, and really it was just chatting with Mama, and not really. And we had it wasn't overly strong that night. I had a difficulty getting a connection, so that actually became a topic of conversation in the ceremony. And a bit later after, I got a vague memory of a lesson or just a chat. Again, now because of what's happened recently, it's just chat. I don't know. I'm not. Like I said, visions are not necessarily real. They're just ideas and just to keep you occupied in many respects. The conversation while she's reprogramming your brain and getting rid of trauma and all this, it's something to distract you from the processes in the body. So I kind of takes a lot of stuff with a pinch of salt now. It's a bit of skepticism with a lot of stuff, again, because there's an element of I don't really know what to believe in that respect. But I still believe heavily that what she does is very important, and from a healing perspective, and I still believe in her in that respect, but not what she tells me necessarily. I don't take it at face value anymore. I take it at face value and read more into it. It's just, well, yeah, it's a nice concept. But again, because it's all unprovable anyway. So what is there really any point? But it's interesting when you're in that space. But she started talking about the potential for why, almost making an explanation for why sometimes there's gaps in the conversation, or there's not necessarily a connection. And she gave me this idea of thinking of space with all the energies in it, but on a multi-dimensional level, where sometimes the transmission, she said, look, it's complicated. Think of it as coming through different mediums in different multi-dimensions to get this connection. And unless it's really strong on the DMT, we don't get a strong connection, because she had me imagining I was the size of a photon riding a light beam and going across the galaxy as a kind of explanation, and the different stuff that you travel that would be potentially blocking you in if it was just real space. But this is even more complicated because it's multi-dimensional energy and has to transfer through. I think it's Pamela and Carlos banging the big drum in the Maloka, because that can travel miles. That thing, they hit that. If you hit it hard, it's a huge, massive drum. That's right. See what I mean? So she must be doing chants or meditation or whatever else she's doing. So, or maybe it's Colin, probably. So what was it? So yeah, I kind of got a lesson on why sometimes there's, and I was still skeptical, saying, "Oh, you're just making excuses for why sometimes you fade out or you don't want to answer the question." I was kind of skeptical in that sense, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Yeah, what else? So that was just basically lying on the bed. Still, I had to. It was again a couple of hours before I went to the toilet. Before I kind of thought, I'm still feeling uncomfortable back here in the room. I'm not cleaned out. There's something stuck still to come. And I did vomit when I got back quite a lot. Because that's the first thing you do. You just get back, stick your fingers down your throat, and I was almost actually. It's kind of working really well as a routine now, because I literally just got back to the room with enough time to get to the bathroom, and just standing up and walking into the bathroom, it was like coming, oh that's good, but I still had to put my fingers down my throat and get all the bile out, and then drink some water. I had the last third of the apple that had been kicking around there for a while, but then it was maybe 2 hours later before I went to the toilet, and then started to think, right, that's as clean as it's going to get now. But it's still hard to drop off. There's still conversations and whatnot, but nothing particularly interesting really. So not that sticks in my mind. So it couldn't have been, because it was a long ceremony, but it wasn't. It was quite mild. It wasn't interesting or bad, bad cleaning in any respect. It wasn't uncomfortable. I can't remember. Oh yeah, I think Colin walked me back that night. We had a bit of a giggle because we were both walkable. Well, he was certainly walkable because he had a bit more. He got about half a cup this time, and he did a bit of the second cup as well, I think. But we'll clarify that later today. But he was dead straight by the time we left, so I just he grabbed his arm because I was pretty fine, but I was still a little bit wobbly, and it was starting to get stronger, kind of more uppy downy. But So yeah, it's just the usual kind of glad to get back, and then it's like, right, let's let's get on with the chat. What we're going to talk about, man. But it was still kind of broken in many ways, and so I don't really remember much more of the conversations. We didn't bother going back to the previous topics. No point rehashing that. And the more I thought about that, I just accept it. I was telling Robbo last night at 2 a.m. when he texted me. Because, it's all very well people having their ideas of spirituality across all religions. It's pointless. Except from the point of view of if it giving you what I'm talking about is pointless. It's not pointless. I don't mean don't have it, obviously. What I mean is trying to understand the actual details, because you'll never know. And if it is multidimensional, you'll never be able to understand it as a 3D creature. So there's only so much you can wonder and get an insight. And even then, it's only the insights that she's telling you. She could be telling other people completely different things that suits their way of thinking. Because like when I talk to Joshua, what's created him as where he is today is, for what most people, I mean, even for me, when I talk to him, his ideas are so in at the deep end. They're so far out, but he's a really intelligent guy. He's exceptionally well read. He's looked at everything. He's looked at psychology, hasn't gone past that as a model. He still thinks it's just traps. He just goes back to the principles of Red Indian, balance with nature, tribes. That's all we should be doing. That's all. It's just living off fruit, living in balance with nature in a tribal setting and just enjoying life. That kind of thing, saying, that they kept all of these tribes. That the reason they stayed at that level of technology was they were spiritually aware that what it leads to. If you go too far, an apathy sets in, and then, I was thinking about it afterwards and adding to it in my own head, because I did have an idea myself of that, thought about things like that in the past. You're thinking about Amish communities when you realize where we are now with the technology that's available. It's become a prison when it's used for dark reasons instead of, toward a Star Trek society. It's used as a prison with, surveillance and tracking everybody for what they do and how they think, and then creating laws that will basically outlaw them on the basis of no freedom of speech, and you're not allowed to think anything outside of what they deem, what the power structure says. So the technology, as good as it is, it's being warped, and so there's that element that he's saying, which kind of makes sense. If you're a highly spiritual community that knows that they have to live in balance with nature, then you would know that you would keep your tools simple so that you don't go down the road of becoming reliant, and then it becomes a form of addiction because you think it leads to happiness, and that the less you have to do using technology to do all the other types of work. But of course, going back to the yin and yang thing. I was thinking about this yesterday again. I've known about Galilean relativity since schoolboy physics. You can't have a singularity, and like in any state, it doesn't mean anything because there's nothing relative to it to be able to judge against of what you are. So happiness cannot exist without badness or evil or whatever. That's why the Taoist dualism is so powerful. It's that idea of like two trains pulling out of a station, and when you can only you're sitting in the carriage and one's pulling out, you don't know whether it's yours or whether it's the one next door until you have an external frame of reference to go, oh no, it's that train that's moving, or it's mine relative to the building behind each, like if you were in space, but that kind of thing. Well, that applies to everything. Without a kind of a reference, the thing that you are can't exist because you can't have any recognition. For example, if you're floating in space and there's nothing to see, you're just in the deep depth of space with no stars or anything, how would you even know how big you are without previous experience? But from just that moment with nothing to refer to, and that's called Galilean relativity. So kind of got into that aspects of sort of conversation to a degree, but I've known all that before. But yeah, basically, I'm not going to bother anymore. It's 20 minutes. There's not really anything to tell. I'm just more looking forward to tonight, really, because it'll be another closure with an Arcana. And just because it's different, we've got the other couple. It's going to be a full house tonight. Josh is back on form after his kind kind of allergic reaction, runny nose and stuff. We thought it was going to be a cold, so that's why I was thinking, oh God, not Joshua gets a cold again. Fuck. I don't want that because I had it last time I was here for a month. But anyway, I'm just waffling. There's no point. Anyway, I'm just going to finish it because I'll try and do Colin, and after the girls come and cleaned our rooms, and then and he's ready after lunch. I'll do his interview.